But if leaders don't know how to implement it and create the change at the core level, then nothing's going to change.
Although it's cool that we are focusing on the organisational aspect of it now and work design and the things that fall under it, I think we're eventually going to get to a point where we realise just focusing on that isn't creating the cultural shift that we want, because ultimately if you implement all of those but you still have these individuals who have sleep debt, who have breathing dysfunction, who don't communicate well, who have personal issues that they haven't resolved, all that's going to come in as individuals, impact the team, which then impacts the department and so on and so forth. So I think we're eventually going to get to a point where we realise that alone organisational doesn't work like people realise with individual, right? And we're going to come to this crescendo where we have to have the two working together in order to get the balance right. And that's going to take a lot for the mining industry, because it's going to mean, oh man, we're going to put a lot of focus on the actual health, both physically and psychologically of our people, which then becomes a risk to potential insurance and productivity.
The awards night for WHS last year, the head of the insurance company, CGI, they were the sponsor, and he came in and said that psychosocial risk in New South Wales, they account for 20% of claims, and in Western Australia they accounted for 8%, and they thought by 2025 it was going to be 25 to 30% of claims in Western Australia were going to be psychosocial. So there's companies going to need to shift and change. I was working with an organisation outside of mining but still in production and large workforce, 2,500 people, and all their leaders had to go to University WA to complete an emotional intelligence 6-month training. So I think that's, if organisations, we talk about how leaders can kind of shift and create change, they need to do some kind of form of training around emotional intelligence and building that muscle, right, and practicing it and working on that. And a good way to practice that is within a container outside of the workplace, so you can actually learn how to build it. What is your response? Not just your actual response, but how does your body respond physically to someone opening up? What does that look like? Do you like recoil and shrivel up because that's really uncomfortable for you? So how can leaders learn to become comfortable with difficult conversations, I think is an important piece to what we're talking about. If organisations want to change psychosocial, they need to be able to have leaders who can communicate and connect and then refer and see what the issues that are happening within a team, rather than kind of a global picture. There's an aspect to that to take place, but if leaders don't know how to implement it and create the change at the core level, then nothing's going to change.
Yeah, and layer deeper, and why I say the organisational stuff and the individual is going to have to work together eventually is because, yeah, you can teach a leader emotional intelligence, but that undercurrent, what they've been through, their model and their perception of the world, is ultimately going to determine how they show up in moments of high stress. And those moments of high stress can make us do stupid things, say stupid things, destroy the trust within our teams if we are the leader. And so in that position, it's having that curiosity, like you said in one of the previous videos. Why am I showing up the way that I do? How do I change this? It's not going to change overnight, but with consistent action, it can.
Yeah, I think a culture of, which I've seen at Whaleback, the culture was around, we don't pass stress to the front line. So they had 2 meetings a day and they had the opportunity to vent whatever it was that was stressful for them. But it wasn't just stress, it was pressure as well. Yes, we've got this deadline that we need to meet here, but we're not going to be putting pressure on the front line because we're like 2 days short in this area or 1 day short in this area. And I guess the benefit of that was, in addition to that, like they're really practicing what they preach, right? And having us rock up to pre-start meetings and allowing half an hour of time for 40 people, so 20 man hours to be allocated to having a conversation about what's going on with the team, what's working, what's not working, and really like breaking the circuit session, a micro version of that prior to a night shift starting.